morning. Today I'm going to argue against the proposition that a vegan lifestyle is dangerous for your body. The advocate stated 3 claims. Vegans will suffer from vitamin deficiency, vegans are more likely to develop mental illness, and vegans will get muscle weakness. So that first claim, vegan will suffer from vitamin deficiency. The advocate specifically mentioned B12, an important vitamin that keeps the nerve and blood cells healthy. As the advocate stated, B12 is only found in meats, fish, dairy, or eggs, which are all foods that a vegan diet does not consist of. And although that may be true, it is not as important as the advocate claims because B12 is actually easily available. It can be purchased on Amazon or on Walmart or different other websites, or it can be prescribed by a doctor, which is typically the most common way to attain it. B12 can be taken orally or through an injection. William Kormos, editor-in-chief of Harvard Men's Health Watch, states a person's B12 levels should rise within a few months. If a more rapid replenishment is needed, a doctor would recommend weekly intramuscular injections, initially followed by daily oral supplement. I'm going to say that this was probably not included in the advocate's speech because of the type of source that she used. So I did a little bit of research on the source to see if it was biased, and it actually was. I found out that the source that was used from the Washington Post, written by Rick Berman, also known as Richard Berman. He is not a nutritionist or a doctor, but an attorney, and he seems to write articles against the vegan lifestyle, and he specifically goes against PETA a lot. He is also the founder of Berman and Company, who his founders include a long list of restaurants that serve meats and seafood. So some of those restaurants are Burger King, Chili's, or Olive Garden, which on that list, none of them were vegan restaurants. He was also a former worker of steak and owl restaurant chains, which I think is pretty biased of him to be writing against a vegan lifestyle when he has a business that is funded by fast food restaurants. So going back to B12 for a moment, it was stated by the advocate that a decrease in B12 increases mental health, which led to her second claim, vegans are more likely to develop a mental illness. But as I stated, B12 isn't unattainable, so thus that already decreases the chances of mental illnesses, decreases the chances of mental health issues. But more importantly, there isn't enough research nor direct links to veganism causing mental issues. Many articles I read didn't prove exact proof. Some even indicated different factors, such as depression already being an issue in someone's life prior to veganism, or it was also mentioned that women typically, there's usually a higher rate of women who are vegans versus men, and naturally women tend to be more hormonal. Nutritionist Connor Cozier says most can offer no evidence that vegans develop depression at a higher rate than meat eaters, but there does seem to be a disproportionate amount of people who already suffer from depression converting to veganism. So for those who feel they have become depressed since going vegan may have had some acute level of health issues before. So contrary to the advocate's claim, studies do show that transitioning to a plant-based diet can improve depression and anxiety. Bridget Henley, dietitian at Mindful states, incorporating more plant-based foods, meditation, and sleep are all known to improve mental health. More specifically, antioxidants found in whole plant foods are associated with lower risk of developing depression. Studies also show that high carbohydrate diets are associated with less depression, hostility, and mood disturbances. And then sesames and sunflower seeds allow your body to best utilize tryptophan, which is the building block of serotonin, a happiness hormone. So lastly, the advocate's third claim, veganism equals muscle weakness. The advocate compared steak or fish, 20 to 35 grams of protein, versus beans and vegetables and rice, 5 to 10 grams of protein. And although there is a bit of a difference, veganism does not equal muscle weakness. Serena Williams, Olympic sprinter Carl Lewis, NFL running back Ariane Foster, and bodybuilder Tor Washington all have one thing in common: they're all vegan. Vegans focus on plant-derived foods to get protein. Sure, they do need to intake more, but it doesn't mean that they can't get that protein. They can actually get the same amount of protein that they could get from meats. And this is just a good example because these are all great athletes. Doctor of Philosophy and registered dietitian Reed Mengel states, "It is easy for a vegan diet to meet recommendations of protein as long as calorie intake is adequate. Strict protein combining is not necessary. It is more important to eat a varied diet throughout the day, do regular weight training. It's the single most important thing you can do to build and hang on to muscle." So in conclusion, becoming a vegan, whether it is long-term or short-term, like Beyonce, who is a vegan for 22 days, isn't dangerous for your body. Vitamin deficiency can occur, but there are plenty of other ways to intake vitamin. There isn't enough research that links mental illness to veganism. And lastly, muscle strength is attainable when in the vegan diet, and then these athletes were an example. Thank you.
All right, everything is structured very clearly and easy to follow. On the first point on B12, as an example, I do have this interesting question. The B12 that people get in injections or in oral formats, if it's only available from animals and animal products and it's distilled down, are people still vegans if they actually take those kinds of things? It's just a thought process. I'm not sure how that works, you know. If the goal is a moral philosophy, and you're supposed to refrain from using those products, and you're still getting it, but it's just in a different format. I don't know that that constitutes veganism. I really don't know. It's an interesting thought that just occurred to me while I was listening to your argument. But I thought that you had the right response here that says people can take vitamin supplements as a way to addressing that issue, and they are not required to consume meats in order to be able to have the B12 that's necessary because it's available in this other source. I thought that was perfectly fine. The criticism of the source that was presented there, I don't know that it gets you that much. You know, the notion that this is an attorney that represents groups that sometimes, you know, restaurants and assorted organizations, I think that's a reasonable press. On the other hand, the fact that he frequently writes against PETA, that enhances his credibility from my point of view, because those people are crazy. You know, but the idea that, you know, this is a point of view. He's not a nutritionist, and he's writing about this issue in part motivated by his desire to defend clients. I think that's a reasonable press to make. I don't know that it gets you that much, because there's not really any dispute about what he said, because you acknowledge it yourself. You know, it's about where can you get this particular vitamin. That's where it comes from. You know, so the fact that he wrote about it and said that, as long as it's true, it doesn't necessarily matter what his perspective on it is. On the second point on the mental health, I think that you've got an interesting argument here. You're basically saying the causality is that it's not that veganism makes people mentally ill, it's that the mentally ill are drawn to veganism, you know, maybe as a way of addressing their mental illness, you know, that they're going to a plant-based diet because that's going to increase or decrease the things that lead to their depression or problems, and I thought that was an interesting point. You know, it certainly balances out some of the evidence that the advocate presented. There's not really a good discussion of what the advocate's evidence was on this point, but there's good evidence on your side that illustrates what this process is. And this is one of those things, like we talked about the other, you know, when we were talking about the reasoning process, which is the cause and which is the effect. Is veganism the cause of mental depression, or do people choose veganism because they're mentally depressed? You know, and I think you've given a good reason why we should be looking at it in this other perspective. And then the thing that I think works really effectively on that last point are your specific examples, which people can identify with and see, well, you know, nobody thinks of Serena as being a weakling or any of these other people, and those are pretty good illustrations. And then they've got the general quote that goes along with that too. So I thought that was very effective. All right, thank you.